Hey guys! Today we are going to be talking about the planets Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So this website I'm using is through NASA and it's the kids version. I will link it in the plans for today. So this is Saturn, and so we can see it right here. And Saturn is not the only planet that has rings around it, but it is definitely one of the most beautiful ones in our solar system. So these rings that we see here are actually made up of tiny ringlets, and they are chunks of ice and rock. So these rings are not actually completely solid, they're just particles of ice and rock. And just like Jupiter, Saturn is mostly a ball of hydrogen and helium. And typically Saturn is known for his rings. And it is also a gas giant, just like Jupiter. Saturn has a thick atmosphere, and there are 7 main rings around Saturn. So, if we're talking about time on Saturn, one day goes by in just 10 hours, and a year on Saturn is the same as 29 Earth years. That is a long year. So, Saturn has 53 moons, but it also has 29 unconfirmed moons that we and scientists are going to need to learn more about to actually be able to confirm them. Saturn is the 6th planet from the Sun in our solar system, which means that Jupiter and Uranus are his neighboring planets. So, here's a picture of Saturn's rings, kind of close up. As you can see, there's a couple different colors, tan and gray, a little bit of almost black, but that's kind of where there is space in between the rings. Here's also another picture, and those 2 dots right there are actually 2 of the moons that are around Saturn. Here's another picture from behind, and here's another picture that's looking like down on top of Saturn. So that's Saturn. All right, let's look at Uranus. So Uranus is made up of water, methane, and ammonia fluids above a small rocky center. So like if you were to cut it open, in the middle you would have rock. Its atmosphere is made of hydrogen and helium, just like Jupiter and Saturn. But unlike Jupiter and Saturn, it also has methane. The methane is what makes Uranus blue. As you can see, it's kind of like a bluish color. So Uranus also has some faint rings. They are obviously not as prominent and as visible as the rings around Saturn, but they are there. So the outer rings are brighter and they are definitely easier to see. So, just like the planet Venus, Uranus rotates in the opposite direction as most other planets. And this is unique to Uranus. It rotates on its side. Look, he is sideways. That is how Uranus rotates in its orbit around the sun. So, Uranus is an ice giant, not gas, and it is made up of mostly flowing icy materials above a solid core. It also has a thick atmosphere, and it is the only planet that spins on its sides. That is what makes it unique, and it spins the opposite direction as Earth and most of the other planets. If we're looking at time on Uranus, one day lasts a little over 17 hours, and 1 year on Uranus is equal to 84 years here on Earth. So, its neighbors. It has 27 known moons, and it is the 7th planet from the Sun, which means Saturn and Neptune are the neighboring planets. So, what does it look like? Here we have a picture of Uranus surrounded by its 4 major rings, and you can see these spots are its moons. Here's another picture of Uranus, and you can see this dark spot on it, and you can kind of faintly see the rings around it. Alright, so that's a pretty unique planet to learn about simply because it does rotate on his side. So let's look at Neptune. Alright, Neptune is a very dark and cold, and it's also very windy on Neptune. It is also the last of the planets in our solar system. It is 30 times as far from the sun as Earth is. So Neptune and Uranus share some similarities. It is made up of thick fog, which is consistent of water, ammonia, and methane, over an Earth-sized solid center. So again, if you were to cut Neptune open, you would have a solid center there in the middle. It does have an atmosphere of hydrogen, helium, and methane, and that methane gives Neptune the same blue color as Uranus. It has 6 rings, but as you can see from this picture right here, they are very hard to see. Alright, so the surface, again, it has 6 rings, but we have a really hard time seeing them. And like Uranus, Neptune is an ice giant. It is similar to a gas giant. It is made up of thick soup of water, ammonia, and methane flowing over a solid core about the size of Earth, and it has a thick, windy atmosphere. So, if we're looking at time, one day on Neptune goes by in about 16 hours, which is a little longer than our days here on Earth. And Neptune has such a long journey around the Sun that it takes 165 Earth years to go around one time. So its orbit is very long. Neptune has 13 moons and one more that is awaiting confirmation. Again, scientists are looking into it and making sure that it is actually there before they confirm it. And Neptune is the 8th and most distant planet from the Sun. That means that Uranus is Neptune's only neighboring planet. Alright, so what does it look like? Here's a picture of Neptune. You can see it's a really pretty blue color. Here's another picture, and these are just some of the cloud streaks that appear around Neptune. Alright, and here's one more picture for you. Alright, so those were our planets in our solar system. So now we're going to talk about Pluto. So Pluto is actually not a planet. It is now considered a dwarf planet, and that happened back in 2006. It was categorized with 3 other objects in the solar system that are about the same small size as Pluto. Alright, so here's a picture for us. Alright, so here's some facts, some fun facts about Pluto. Pluto is only about half the width, so as wide, as the United States, as we can see right here. Here's Pluto, and here's the United States. So, almost all of the planets travel around the Sun in nearly perfect circles. However, Pluto does not. It takes an oval-shaped path, with the Sun nowhere near its center. What's more, its path is quite tilted from the nice orderly plane where all the planets orbit. So, if we're looking at these diagrams, Pluto's way out here, and you can see it's kind of it's not as nice of a circle as the rest of our planets right here. It's a little bit wider than the rest of our planets. So also, notice that this little arrow right here means that Pluto is spinning to the left, right? So it's the opposite direction of the other planets, with the exception of Venus and Uranus that also are going to be spinning to the left, right? So, here's a better picture of Pluto's path. So here's Pluto, and it's going to be taking this long oval-shaped path. That is its orbit around the Sun. So notice how it's much wider and longer than the other planets. Alright? So, here's another picture that came from NASA. They got that picture. Alright. So we continue to learn more about the planets every day. Again, this is what Pluto is going to look like, so you can see a picture of it. Alright, so that's a little bit about Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and the dwarf planet Pluto. Have a great rest of your day, guys.